So if you just make new habits and patterns, aren't they relatively autopilot?
Yeah.
Wouldn't this be easier than giving yourself tons of mental models and introjects and boundaries and policing and all that journaling and gratitude journals and vision boards and forward-focused 30-day challenges and all that stuff if you could just make some new patterns that the nervous system adapts to and autopilot?
I feel you need the modeling and stuff, and then you have a crash, and some of that gets downloaded at that time, at the rebirthing, death, devouring, disgust.
You have a crash. What's a crash?
The current system is not adequate. I think that's the kind of feeling I get. Something is off, something, and then you have a new...
Disrupts.
Crash.
And that will force some sort of nervous system resequencing.
Is it them? Is it me? Is it luck? Is it whatever? So that's, and then it starts, and then...
You're starting to ask questions. You're starting to reorient. So chaos could be a good thing. Chaos isn't all evil. Chaos could create a disruption.
Yes.
A crash that causes natural reorganization and nervous system adaptation.
Yes. This reminds me of that pointer Holly mentioned about grace being that someone or some force alleviates your sins without you having to pay for it. But in a way, the original sin, if it was Apple, the knowledge, and so the knowledge part doesn't like the crash. So that was this big thing, to allow the crash to happen. It's not going to kill you.
Oh, the knowledge part. Is that the superego, intellect, ego, identity, narrative, serpent voice?
Yeah, bit of everything. Yeah.
Oh, bit of everything.
Maybe more intellect.
Archons.
Yeah, bit of everything.
Archons don't like too much chaos. But if the Archons are evil and chaos is all evil, how can they not be friends?
Yeah.
This is pretty good. The group is already somewhat thinking about, or might be able to digest Bachman's intrapsychic activation model. Is that what? IPAM? Maybe come up with a weird, framing. Because that had a lot of parallels to ISTDP, and it has a lot of parallels with the nervous system, and if the group could entertain Bachman's IPAM model, maybe that's the secret to the dual mothership. So maybe Bachman broke up with Grannon because Grannon tried to run with the system before it was complete.
Ooh.
And due to Bachman's kind-hearted purity of trying to keep the teachings pure for the group, and there's no selfish drives in him, we had to separate from Grannon. Okay, let's see how this lands. I cut out all the fat, so I might need to pause a lot, because there's not that many repetitions in this. This is...
I call it the interpsychic activation model.
We are now in Vaknin level 301, 401 type doctorate level discourse. Intrapsychic activation model. Is anyone intimidated? Really? Is anyone excited? Sounds kind of sketchy. Eye punkage is better. Ha ha ha. But remember the pointer. The nervous system adapts to habits and patterns. That's sort of similar territory.
IPAM, Interpsychic Activation Model. Everything starts with the environment. Everything starts with reality. The reality. There are two types of environment, external and internal.
Everything starts in the environment, and I could add everything also ends in the environment. And if you want to program your nervous system, you have to work with the environment that your nervous system naturally adapts to. Maybe almost by definition, being biological entities on the earth, our nervous system adapts to the environment first, before even thought. We can try to will our body to try to adapt to the environment, but there's only so much our will can do, right? People are dealing with cold weather in winter. It's a bit cold, so you use heat and clothing and snow blowers to adapt to the environment. How many people are using your thought power to just block the storm? How many people are using affirmations and boundaries to just tell off the snowstorm to go away? Wouldn't that be comical to use boundaries and goal setting and affirmations and psychological tricks to try to manage weather in your environment? So how come our psychological gimmicks we use in the psychological field that doesn't work in our physical environment? It doesn't work with weather. So everything starts in the environment and everything ends in the environment. And there's an external environment and there's an internal environment. So your internal environment could be the fantasy. External environment could be reality, fantasy and reality. But let's just all call it environment. Simplify it. Welcome, Nick.
And these environments flood you all the time with data, information, stimuli, sensory inputs, and so on. And what I'm saying is there is an ensemble, a group of self-states. Each self-state is optimized for a specific environment. The environment triggers them.
So you have different self-states or parts. Who cares? And they're triggered through different environments. So you have a self-state that works as a job. And you got a self-state that works when you're dating. And you have a self-state that works when you're drunk. There are different self-states, roles, personas, subparts that adapt to different environments. Maybe when you're driving, you're in a self-state of driving, and then when you're sleeping, you're in a sleeping self-state, because you don't need to be thinking about brakes and maneuvering your car when you're asleep. So when you go into autopilot mode, do you use mental models to create mental maps of how to navigate traffic? Or your body sort of says, brake, I need to brake. Your body responds to the cues in the environment, the stimulus. And it's sort of autopilot, muscle memory. Your nervous system adapts to habits and patterns within the environment, or the nervous system adapts with habits and patterns in response to the environment. With self-states are like these combinations of ways to adapt.
So when you're in a specific environment, a self-state comes out, takes over your totality. The other self-states are quiescent. They become dormant. When the self-state takes over, comes coupled with specific constructs.
Okay.
The general is the self-state.
Okay.
Self-state comes to the fore, dragging his soldiers behind him.
Yeah.
And this
So now he's introduced constructs. So there's self-states. There's probably less self-states, and underneath the self-states has multiple constructs. Those constructs I would simplify by saying they're constructs of narrative. They're constructs of stories. They're usually language constructs to interface with your self-state and sort of make sense of what's happening. Those are your constructs. Then we'll mostly dive into constructs. So IPAM mostly works with constructs and defense mechanisms, which are probably also a construct. We'll see how he describes it.
soldiers are the constructs. The construct has two functions, basically. One is to organize reality in a way that makes sense to the self-state. And the second, mediating reality by falsifying it.
So the self-state can interpret reality, make sense of it. There's a sense-making aspect. And two, there's a falsifying aspect of it. That is the defense mechanism, so the self-state feels like it's in control and it has a predictable pattern. There's not too much chaos. Eight o'clock. Intro. So there's a falsifying part. Pay attention to that. It's coming later.
Defense mechanisms' main function is to impair reality testing.
So your defense mechanism is the second purpose of constructs, and that's to impair your reality testing because reality has too much chaos. Reality is too disturbing. Reality is too discomforting. So you have defense mechanisms that smooth things over so that your ego narrative feels like it's in control, feels like there's continuity, feels like the archons aren't controlling it even though the archons are. So it creates a sense of agency, it creates a sense of things aren't going to fall apart. The defense mechanisms creates a sense of safety, that people aren't going to just invade your territory and mess with your mind.
They create what we call ego congruency. They make you feel comfortable with your conclusions and the way you perceive reality.
It makes you feel right, so that if someone says something different, you feel invaded, and that's because you have this ego congruency that makes you feel like you know what's going on.
Impair reality testing. The construct call Introjects to them. Say, hello Introject, can you help me with this? I have a problem here.
So, self-states, constructs, defense mechanisms are part of constructs, and the constructs call introjects and automatic thoughts and voices to be their soldiers, I guess.
Introjects are internal voices that represent meaningful people in your life. The constructs select introjects. The constructs say, okay, I will filter out the reality to fit the self-state. I will notice only threats. When I see love, I will ignore it. I will repress it. I will reframe it. I will say, he loves me because he wants something from me.
Yeah.
What do introjects do? They create what we call automatic thoughts.
So when people have a fantasy deef would be an introject that your construct has a relationship with. And the fantasy deef has a voice that can promote certain things to create a sense of ego congruency. Your constructs are more of your narrative, with which a lot of therapy tries to fix your constructs. But if therapy is fixing your constructs with another defense mechanism, or an introject of your therapist, or an introject of Deef, your constructs are just doing the same thing of blocking reality, creating this sense of you're in control, the superego, the serpent voice. It's just continuing the deception.
The automatic thoughts take over the internal processes. They drown out all the other processes. But there's one.
You could have like an archon that's like an introject that decides to flood all the other voices to try to hijack the construct. So if you have a narcissist that gives you an introject that monologues a lot, it could hijack your inner automatic voices, flood your inner chapter to try to limit the power of the construct. You could have rebellion in your system where the introjects are supposed to follow the construct, where now the introjects have taken over because they've tapped into archon energy and rebellion energy, and now there's an inner civil war where the introjects are now battling, and maybe there's like some mythological story that where this has happened, where the constructs get taken over and there's this inner turmoil that's happening. I'm trying to make this exciting. Come on.
Problem, you have memories. These memories of having succeeded in the past challenge your self-state.
And now there's a fourth player going on. So you got self-states, constructs, you got the introjects, and then you have a threat, memories. Memories are tricky things. Why are they trouble?
If you have memories that challenge the self-state, it creates dissonance, inner conflict, and the memories need to be silenced.
So you have a self-state. The self-state is saying, I'm here to fight against a fucked up parent. This is my self-state. This is my identity. Then you might have a memory where your fucked up parent isn't there anymore, and you have someone that's a friend or someone that isn't threatening. That memory is threatening to the self-state. That creates dissonance and anxiety. So then the automatic beliefs and the constructs will work together maybe for a moment to take out the memory. And then once the memory is taken out, the constructs and self-states, the constructs and the introjects go back to fighting the civil war. You see how exciting your inner world is? So you got the self-states that are your identities, your habits. Then you got the constructs that are trying to keep things copacetic. And then they have these introjects that are used to say certain things to keep things in motion, motivate you. Then the introjects get like hubris and they want to take out the constructs, so then there's that fight. And then once in a blue moon, you have a relationship with real people that trigger all this shit. Create a new memory. And then all of them have to go fight against a new memory and sabotage all intimacy. That would be your outer critic. Which we covered right before Trina left, in June 25th. So she's coming back in perfect timing to circle back to outer critic.
And the third function is to falsify your memory. Everything is falsified.
Haha! The constructs can now tweak your memories, distort your perceptions to falsify memories that would threaten your self-states.
To fit
Threaten
the self-state.
your identity.
So there's a central authority. Everything is falsified to fit the self-state.
Because your self-state likes to not die. Your protector parts has spent all this life doing this job. It still thinks that job is very vital. It doesn't just die automatically. So new memories that threaten it would sort of make it die. But you have all these defenses that would block the memories and falsify the memories to keep this old pattern, this old nervous system adaptation, continuing on the habit.
So there's a central authority specific to each self-state, that's a construct, that harmonizes everything by falsifying everything. The construct will push you to behave in a way that will bring about failure. I will self-sabotage.
So your serpent voice, your construct, its job is to falsify reality and almost self-sabotage all your healing and growth to keep the old pattern going. Isn't that lovely?
You have numerous defense mechanisms whose role to render the outcome acceptable to you, to prevent secondary anxiety. This completes the picture.
Right.
Now you are hermetically sealed in a totally fake environment created by your constructs.
Yeah.
Everything in it is fake. You're trapped now. What could spring you out of the trap?
You're trapped. You are trapped in your own bubble. You're trapped. You've built so many defenses that the only thing to attack is yourself. Imagine that. Or you're trapped like this. Or you're trapped like this. You set so many boundaries because all those damn therapists told you to set boundaries that now you trap yourself with all your damn walls. Hermetically sealed.
A new environment. The minute there's a new environment, the self-state changes. And all this hyper-constructed universe, this simulation, actually, all of it vanishes.
Oh, here's a back door. I didn't do enough of an intro. I cut too fast. In the edit.
Spring you out of the trap. A new environment.
How do you get out of your trapped mind? A new environment. Everything starts in the environment. Everything ends in the environment. All you need to do is new environments. And what's the environment of all your relational trauma? Relationships. You need a new relational container to disrupt your self-state. Bring up anxiety to force some new information into these fucking walls. So that your constructs and your self-states and your automatic thoughts get updated. That's all. Doesn't that sound so simple? We're getting there. This is Vaknin. He doesn't present anything simple.
Right.
Now you are hermetically sealed in a totally fake environment created by your constructs.
Yeah.
Everything in it is fake. You're trapped now. What could spring you out of the trap? A new environment. The minute there's a new environment, the self-state changes.
A new environment. That's the back door. New environment, new relationships. Why do codependents keep going to new narcissists? Because that's a new environment. If it's new, there's a chance something might change. But you're going to you're going to another mothership. It's going to just repeat it. But at least you're doing something. If you're in the old environment, you know it's sort of stagnant. So you'll throw away your old narcissist loser, then you'll move on to a new one, and then you'll be frustrated because of repetition compulsion, because your new environment's not new enough. Or you're not consciously choosing a new environment. Or there's no new environments that can help you, because we're in colonized America. where everyone's codependent. So it's hard to find a new relational environment, containments, to allow your self-states fall apart to rebuild a new one. And if you go to therapy, therapy helps you build new constructs to keep your fucking old zombie self-state continuing to live. Which, by part 3, I'll try to link something.
And all this hyper-constructed universe, this simulation, actually, all of it vanishes like that. Poof, nothing. Every time the environment changes, you have these gaps. And this is what is called dissociative gaps. Because in the gaps, you don't exist.
You don't have a self-state to explain the gaps. So then your self-state just sort of struggles to get re-selfed. And then you have constructs and introjects that fill the noise in this sort of period of gap. Or you dissociate and you go to fantasy. When you dissociate, you go into fantasy. That creates a sense of continuity. But when you dissociate, because of anxiety, that's an opportunity that your environment is unstable enough that if you could get grounded into your environment when you dissociate, your self-state could update its map. But if you make a judgment that you're dissociating, that's another introject that keeps the fantasy and inner chaos going, so you're not paying attention to your environment. Very tricky.
There's no self-state that takes over in these gaps. They're life-threatening. So what you do, you dissociate them. Okay. Only the environment can change you. Yeah. And this is something which will provoke huge resistance.
Yes.
Nothing comes from the inside.
This part was what I was trying to set earlier.
This is something which will provoke huge resistance.
If you want a shortcut to despair, consider this existential argument.
Yes. Nothing comes from the inside. There's no way to avoid the environment, escape it.
Only in the environment changes things. Nothing comes from the inside, because from the inside is all fantasy. Because your nervous system is adapting to your external environment. Your nervous system is not adapting to your fantasy environment. Your fantasy just creates continuity so that your constructs feel like they're doing something, and that your self-state is still fighting whatever battle or whatever purpose the self-state is supposed to do, to keep you safe, to keep danger out. Fantasy helps keep that going, but only real change happens in your environment. Containment. Only real change happens in relational environments. So you need a new relational environment where your constructs, self-states, and introjects fail. Your defenses fail. And then the anxiety forces your constructs and your self-states to update for your new reality.
Environment. And environment is the only trigger to change in self-states. Nothing comes from the inside.
Yeah.
Only the environment changes you. Okay. Only the environment can change you.
No complaints, no one's fighting against this very depressing message. Only in the environment can change you. In the long term, it's a freeing message, but in the short term, isn't that pretty disgusting? Didn't we trigger people's disgust the past couple meetings? Is anybody spewing some morality at this argument? Okay, who agrees with the argument if you guys don't want to fight against it? Only environment changes you? Okay.
Sure.
You're following? You're not
Yeah.
just a construct that's trying to make your ego congruent and make yourself think you're a good...
It might be, but that would be my environment shaping me.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. New experiences develop, it's our memories that create our identity. So if you're creating new experiences, you've got new memories.
Creating new memories. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then new memories will compete against your old memories. And if you're having enough new memories that counter your old memories of doom and depression, whatever, then your nervous system and all your other parts will start readjusting to your new memories. Yeah.
Would that be the same as exposure therapy? Possibly.
Exposure is probably part of it. If you get re-exposed and then it's just, if your constructs are able to manipulate other people in your environment to continue the pattern, then the exposure is not going to, it would create new memories that match your old memories. Or if the other person's construct, you're in a new environment and you're with another codependent or another narcissist, and they pull the same strings in you. So you're creating a new memory and you're exposing yourself to another narcissist, but it's the same pattern. Or if you're in therapy and you're with a therapist and they see your trauma, and then they say,
there is no
they say,
I don't know how to. So one, you're disturbing me, and two, you're making me feel incompetent. Fuck you. I don't know how to. So one, you're disturbing me, and two, you're making me feel incompetent. Fuck you.
So if you were to go into a new environment, a trusted environment with a therapist or codependent group, and finally you dump your trauma out, you dump your biggest venom out. And when you dump your biggest venom out, what happens is that...
know how to. So one, you're disturbing me.
The codependent gets disturbed because they don't know how to fix your venom. Their ego and their constructs don't know how to give you new introjects to keep up the play going. So then they abandon you, which is your old pattern. So even though you're in a new environment of exposure, it's still continuing the repetition compulsion. So the magic is anxiety. That's what ISTDP works with. That's what Bowen theory thinks is the key thing. And this is what Vakman also has stumbled upon recently.
Therapy is about generating anxiety. Because when you're faced with an insight, as I'm telling you, listen, look at your behavior. The way you're seeing it is wrong.
Yeah.
You should see it differently. This creates dissonance and anxiety. Therapy is about creating anxiety. What is anxiety? It's exactly what self-states are trying to eliminate.
Yes.
Therapy is a fight against the self-states.
So you're trying to take the inner conflict of the self-state and the constructs fighting the introjects, and you're trying to externalize it, where the self-state is now fighting this external source of anxiety, or anxiety comes out, and then now the container, the relational group, the therapists, a new attachment, they can now be the enemy of the self-state, and all the constructs and introjects will go full-blown venom onto the new environment that's trying to fuck with the self-state. And the self-state doesn't want to die, so self-state's going to fight dirty, especially if the self-state is a girl, because girls fight dirty.
We therapists should create anxiety where the self-state's goal is to eliminate anxiety. So we're
Now, the therapist should create anxiety, but there's a good amount of therapists that love soothing anxiety. Even ISTDP therapists, they're knee-jerk soothing anxiety, even in a supervision course. They're all like bleeding anxiety and jumping to soothe anxiety, even though that model is trying to elicit anxiety.
Fighting. We're enemies. If I had the possibility, if I could reach the point where I eliminate all cell states simultaneously, I could induce healing, because the anxiety would be tolerated.
Yes.
Would be tolerated.
So if you can numb the self states, then a person has more automatic capacity to tolerate anxiety. As long as there's strong self states that are strong identities and that's your inner containment, there's limited containment for anxiety. So ISTDP labels each defense, and then it creates a therapeutic alliance to slowly invite the client to consciously try to move to the new self state, because there's realization that the old self state's being a loser and you're repeating the thing over and over again. So don't you want to stop living in the past and being a zombie? That'd be the incremental way. But if you could do a giant bomb, like a disgust bomb, then you could shortcut your self states, and then everyone's acting out. That would be a shortcut. But then when the shortcut happens, then everybody wants to moralize and point fingers and revert stuff, and constructs and introjects go crazy in the room. Which is a lot of fun also. So drama isn't all bad.
The person will survive and then be changed, transformed. Having experienced anxiety, there will be transformation in the set of principles.
Right.
That's why we say that.
That's what you want to get to. You want to adapt to the point where your principles change. Not your introjects, not your core beliefs, but the principles of how you live life, how you navigate reality. That needs to change. None of this never again bullshit, never again abandonment, never again being cheated by. That's like not a principle. That's like a evil devil, like stuck in the past, not living in the present. That's living backwards. And if you spell evil backwards, E-V-I-L, it's live backwards. And devil is L-I-V-E-D, lived backwards. The devil is in the details. Live backwards is the devil. Evolve backwards is love. I was playing with that earlier. I'm wondering if love is something that does not evolve. Love is timeless. So love being evolved backwards works also. So if you're living a life backwards, doing post hoc rationalizations, which was in the Sam Vaknin video, you're living in reverse. You're living with a negative identity, and you're in a position of avoidance. If you're in a position of avoidance, you might be serving the devil, even if you believe in order and positive and all that other sugary purity bullshit. What is your environment and what is your lifestyle? Are you serving the devil? Are you serving progress, the futures, the present, past, future, all your time is aligned? The devil will get you distracted to making the devil think some evil being, but archons would still take you over with your fight against evil. Especially if you're fighting evil in the past because you were hurt in the past. Now you're living in the past. You're serving evil because you're living backwards. I think life is meant to be lived forward, being engaged and facing forward. Oh, damn! Is that Grannon's new course? Did he steal it from me? Day 25 of the 30-day challenge. That seems to be adaptive, natural way of navigating experience, space and time. And for idiots who can't read, or don't want to read, look, there was a chart I put on day 16 in the forum. January 20th, 2022. Look at these arrows for people that don't want to read words. You want to focus on your aim on wants and needs and don't put it on ain'ts and abuser bullshit and pains. And this facing forward might make someone heal from codependence. Only taking granted like 10 years to figure that out. Let's hear what he said.
To look forward into the future so that you're naturally and spontaneously focusing on what you do want, as it turns out, happens to be a really good way of developing boundaries. I didn't know this.
Grannon did not know this. This looks like an honest reveal, though he could be lying. Or it took him this long to figure this out. That if you're in motion, you have some goals, you can enforce boundaries better. He did not know this.
Way of developing boundaries. I didn't know this. I didn't know this. I started doing this a few months ago, and there is no way on this earth that I could be called a codependent at this point. Now, you may remember at the beginning of this year, and even last year in 2022, I was doing videos and I was like, I know how to help you overcome CPTSD, codependency. I don't know what to do.
He didn't know what to do. Just a year ago, or yeah. CPTSD, he has some ideas, but also he didn't heal his CPTSD.
It turns out that simply becoming focused on what you do want and then just moving towards it, in my case at least, was the piece of the puzzle that helped me to overcome codependency. Nobody could call me a codependent at this point in my life. And I wasn't thinking boundaries, I wasn't thinking childhood trauma, I wasn't thinking attachment styles or even particularly emotional literacy. I was just like, I want what I want.
So he wasn't doing all this internal introject fixing and making new mental constructs. He started moving forward in his external environment, and by changing environments that created dissociative gaps, forcing his self-state to adjust and adapt to the environment. Because instead of being a moderator and reading people's actual fucking posts, he was just soothing everyone's anxiety and emotions, and maybe some of my posts sunk in. And then now he's not, maybe he's improved, he's not living in this life of avoidance. And he's facing forward. He's forward focused. Because couldn't copy things word for word. That'd be like too much plagiarism. So just forward focused. This is a magical key for people. I will give you hypnosis and all this other stuff for a basic principle of orientation. If you have no focus, you're just spinning in circles.
In a righteous way, in a good way, like I know it's good for me, I know it's good for my family, I know it's in alignment with my values, I'm not hurting anybody, I'm not doing any damage in the world, but this massively improved my boundaries in 2023 and massively helped me to overcome the sort of addictive, weird tendency to fawn, to seek to please other people.
Now, see, if I could sell my package this way, I could sell a bunch of courses, but I sell it a different way. I sell it like this in February 2022.
Should, right? So not getting into that loop.
Well, if you should not should, you're still shooting. Yeah. The way out of shooting is to have a target. If you're shooting, you're saying don't do something. You got to have a do something. That's the way out of shooting. I need a target. I need to aim. Instead of don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. That's not an aim. That's a avoidance strategy. It's useful, but you need to have a target. Go try to drive and just tell the GPS, don't go here, don't go here, don't go here. See how your GPS is going to work.
Yeah, tell the GPS, I don't want to go to McDonald's, and see what happens.
And see how much work you have to say. I don't want to go here, don't want to go here, and just see if you can get the GPS to guide you somewhere.
That would take a very long time.
You see, the GPS will be crippled. We're telling our brain's GPS, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. The brain can't navigate that.
No.
The way out of shooting is to have a target, have a target, have a target. But if I treat you like an idiot, and I say, this heals you from codependence, and create a bunch of mystery and mystique, and say, here's a 30-day challenge where I'll give you hypnosis and affirmation and all this other stuff. So anxiety is the key. Let's dive into ISTDP. See if that links with Bachman's IPAN. See if that links with the need to have a target, the need to change your environment, the need to deal with anxiety and defenses.
So it's very important that it's not about right or wrong.
From
Don't
yesterday?
get yourself hooked up with that. It's like you test a hypothesis, the supervisor in the room, your patient, will always let you know where to go. I'm just here to help you listen to the true supervisor over time.
So earlier you talked about social taboos, and before you came, they were talking about you have to make ISTP what's natural. But could I frame two different mindsets? So the old pattern is social taboos where everybody collectively covers up anxiety and keeps up appearances and pretenses. That's what we're socially conditioned. And
Absolutely.
this new pattern. Absolutely. So he is agreeing that social norms have taboos where you're not supposed to call out defenses. Has social taboos where you're supposed to soothe people's anxiety. You're not supposed to call out truths too strongly because that might make other people anxious. We must pretend to play nice and hold our tongues and hold our disgust to keep up pretenses. Pattern is trying to call out those defenses. So the alternative, not just for ISTDP, if you can apply the same principles of calling out a potential abuser, manipulator, narcissist, then they're going to not like the anxiety of having to deal with reality, and you'll have natural boundaries. The more you can be comfortable with anxiety and calling out your defenses, the more that you can call out other people's anxiety, manipulations, and they'll create distance. Natural boundaries. Masks that everybody hides behind, and then slowly try to redirect to mobilize for feelings and emotions. Mobilize for feelings and emotions, that mobilizes you to change environment. That mobilizes you to change things in your life, to change things in your inner world and outer world. But it comes from, in ISTDP, it comes from an unconscious therapeutic alliance where the relationship with the therapist or with the group is the container that creates a new environment, a different environment, that stirs up the self-sticks, that points out the defenses that block reality, and puts those defenses aside so that natural emotions can come up. So mobilize, motivation, and change. You've labeled that as asking for unconscious supervision. Could that also be framed as process approach, where you're trying to trust underlying processes from the unconscious and helping them appear through experimentation, discovery, exploration, testing?
It's really a form of iterative, sequential experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're conducting a series of experiments, and it's iterative, and every patient response is refining our understanding. So our knowledge is always changing in response to the unconscious and conscious feedback from.
So every response from other person is unconscious supervision. Or every response from the other person is either good or bad based on your morality system, so you can try to colonize them to your fucking comfort level. So that they don't fuck up your self-states and you don't fuck up their self-states, and all of you are living fucking zombie lives. Because you're living in the past, whether or not you think you're worshiping the devil. If you're choosing the path of comfort, avoiding your anxiety and helping other people avoid anxiety, you're enabling the other people's defenses, and they're enabling your defenses, and then everyone lives backwards, and the devil gets to celebrate. But the devil is probably the left hand of God, so no one really cares. It all works out in the big frame. So it's these minuscule framings to make it exciting.
The patient.
So it's very dynamic.
Well, you could think of it as a relational epistemology.
Mm.
It's not like I know an object, but the person is actually informing and changing my thinking and understanding.
This is really hard. Are you going to place the truth in your head? Or the truth in some dead person you're memorizing, or a living crazy person you're ideology? Or you place the truth in the relationship with people, and that truth is always unfolding. And then the more tests you do, the deeper you get your relationships, the deeper your truth can be with others. And that's knowing other people. Isn't that like the biblical thing of intimacy? This person knew the person. And we simplify it as a sex. But it's knowing people more is knowing truth. Truth is in relationships in the environment. And relationships with other human beings, other living conscious beings, is even a deeper truth the more we can build that thread and bridge of relationships. And just following that feedback and getting deeper and deeper into knowing each other, getting closer to unspeakable truths or unknowable truths. Then the knowledge base is in the person's unconscious, but also in the relational dynamic, instead of some culturally imposed right or wrong.
Because the patient will be giving us feedback through conscious feedback, unconscious defenses, unconscious anxiety, unconscious feelings, unconscious defenses, unconscious transference, right? So we're getting multiple modes of unconscious feedback that's supervising us so that we can find out what's the unconscious logic driving the conscious illogic.
One of the things I sometimes do is when I notice there's a dissonance between what people say consciously. That's when people go into new environments. There's a gap. So then there will be dissonances between what they say and what they do because they're in a new environment. The defense mechanisms are sloppy. And what their behavior is, which is a dissonance. So then I sometimes try to point out that the behavior that's not matching. I got that from John Frederick's conscious claim.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you say you want this, right? You say you want a closer relationship with your husband, but then you had this affair. So it sounds like you're actually at war with your own desire. Remember,
That's the inner war. The self state has a desire, then you have the defense mechanism that blocks your acting out. So you have the inner war, but in order for that to change, it has to be externalized into your external environment. And that conflict needs to be fought out or talked out in the external environment. It can't be done just in your internal world. Maybe so. That's the argument.
remember what the patient says, what the patient is conscious of is the result of defenses. Defenses remove everything that's uncomfortable.
Isn't that what Vaknin said? He didn't even watch Vaknin's video. Or maybe he did. I don't know. Defenses remove everything that's uncomfortable.
Right? Defenses remove everything that's uncomfortable. Whatever is left is what we're conscious of. Defenses remove everything that's uncomfortable. Whatever is left is what we're conscious of. So the patient can only give a conscious report based on what defenses exclude. So if we listen only to manifest content, we're only hearing what the defenses let get through. Everything else is on the other side of that filter.
So if you only listen to their defenses, that's goal is to keep the delusion, keep the illusion, manage the anxiety. Now, that's where I say, how do you know that? What's your argument? What's your claim? No, let's go play out your theory. Sure. Let's explore it. Because every answer is going to have unconscious supervision. So even though the defense might be a lie, the defense still has answers because the defense is linked to memories. The defense is linked to unintegrated memories. Slightly different thing, but within the same approach.
So we're having to listen to what the patient says, but then we're also having to listen to see, okay, what are the defenses warding off? First of all, what are the defenses, and what are those defenses warding off?
My shortcut is like, where's their attention? Where do they care? Why do they care so much about this? Where are they really defended? Why are they defended here? Where's the biggest wound so I can remember it, so I could take advantage of it later? But these are very important details that constantly people are giving off tells. Where do they care? Where are they defending the most? That's important. That's a clue I use to find people's unintegrated memories.
What's the information that's being excluded from the patient's report?
What's being hidden?
What's the information that's being excluded from the patient's report?
All of you guys like to go find the most offensive thing. That's just like a firework distraction bullshit. What's the most offensive, outrageous behavior? You guys will follow that. What's the most angry, raging nonsense? I'll say, what's dissonant when they're really angry? Where are they exposing their wound? Where are they calling for help? Where are they crying while they're angry? That's what I look for. But I'm fucked up. So yeah. Everybody else looks for the heat. Yeah, follows it. It is entertaining.
You seem to be at war with yourself. Yeah. Do you notice that too? In that sense, you're reminding the patient what's on the other side of the filter. Could that thought be underestimating your true potential? I never thought about that. So would it make sense for us to look underneath that thought so we can discover your true potential, right? Him, it seems like a fact, and we're having to help him see, actually, it's not a fact, it's a defense. It's a way you're talking to yourself the way teachers did. It's a way you're relating to yourself as your father did. You're probably even afraid that I would think this about you, the transference. He doesn't realize that that defense has a price, that it's actually causing his depression. All that's happening outside is awareness, right? Defenses remove everything that's uncomfortable. Whatever is left is what we're conscious of. What's the information that's being excluded from the patient's report?
What's the truth that's not explicitly spoken? what's out there, but that's not fully clarified? How are people exposing themselves, sharing their vulnerabilities, breaking down right in front of you, and you're missing a giant opportunity to see their vulnerable side, to see them. Who wants to build character? So one of the biggest defenses is sophistry, and one of the biggest dangers of sophistry is deconstruction. Maybe I can link that to building. Let's see.
Deconstruction is the worst kind of sophistry. Sophistry is an attack on the phenomena themselves, on the very fabric of the universe, if you like, on ontology. The sophist destroys the access to thinking and hence destroys the access to the world. Sophistry is a thinking against thinking. And
so sometimes when people, their defense mechanism is desperate, they have a scorched earth strategy. But sometimes people would use deconstruction before they reach scorched earth. So they're almost at scorched earth. They'll use some form of deconstruction to blow up things to keep their defenses and keep their self-states and all the constructs back in order. But that comes at a price, that they deconstruct other people's constructs. See? So, deconstruction will deconstruct other people's constructs. It'll destabilize other people's constructs. It's like a fragmentation bomb. But the price of using deconstruction to blow up somebody else's constructs is you blow up your own constructs. So if you're a sophist that has fallen into the dark arts of using deconstruction to win arguments, to climb some academic nonsense ladder or whatever, you're going to now fall prey to even more devil worship for your lifestyle, because that deconstruction of other people's concepts and constructs is going to make you fall into fantasy because you lose touch with reality. Your constructs are so good at deconstructing other people, blowing up other people's constructs, that you lose touch with navigating space, time, and shared reality. That's the price. Then you actually get resentful, and then you try to blow up anybody else that's trying to get to reality, because now you've sold your soul to the devil. Figuratively, metaphorically. You're living a lifestyle where the present moment is so scary that even if you're in boring present moment, eye to eye with somebody, your mind will still go into fear, because just being vulnerable and boredom is scary. Or you'll go into paranoia. Oh, there has to be something to be scared of, because you're so disconnected from shared reality.
deconstruction is a continuous attempt at an external attack on logos.
Comes a continuous attempt at logos, at reality, at logic, at the environment, that you lose your soul, so then your identity becomes a construct of never again and not losing, or feeding off power.
By twisting through a simulation, a surrogate of logos. Deconstruction is the worst kind of sophistry. Deconstruction
So building character and building narrative. When I was in general engineering, one of the classes that is a fundamental class is called statics. And statics is using equations to measure the stability of structures from different directions of force to evaluate whether or not it would survive stresses. How solid is this architecture, drawing, components? Can we measure it so that we're not just building something that will topple over due to some random event, right? If you're a company and you want to build something and you don't want to dump $10 million into a bridge that just falls apart at the first storm, that's pretty logical if you're building an external structure. If you're building character and you're building your narrative, what rules do you guys have to make sure your narrative is fundamentally, statically sound? What kind of principles is your therapist telling you on how to navigate your life so that what you're building with your boundaries is solid and will last under stress? It's an obvious thing for a home. You do it when you wear clothes in your car. You're looking for things that last. You choose shoes that give you traction in the snow. You don't just delude yourself by giving yourself a construct in some affirmation saying, oh, I'll be balanced on these really no traction shoes. Do people do that? Do people build vision boards where they say, oh, I just have muscles and they don't have anything in real life that matches that? It's obvious in real life. You evaluate something based on its structure, based on its longevity, based on its function, and then if it sucks, you own it. If you're building character, you build character with principles. You build character with virtue. You build character with courage. You build character with all those other character traits that old cultures would tell people. Is it principles or what? Virtues or something else? Vices and virtues? What's the positive thing? So the virtues and principles, and those are your anchors for building your character. That's been told to civilizations and societies for hundreds and thousands of years. This is not anything new. But now we're on the path of deconstruction. We're not building character. We're building, let's destroy somebody else's structure and we feel good.
Deconstruction is the worst kind of sophistry. Sophistry is an attack on the phenomena themselves.
So now we just define everything as power. So if I just deconstruct your structure, I feel more powerful than you, and I'll spend my whole life creating the illusion of power and solidity by knocking down everybody else's structures. That's how we teach character now. Only in the domain of this socio-cultural thing we can build character. We can feel like there's character by deconstructing and being sophists. But in real life, we don't do that. When we build buildings and we choose clothes, we fix our roofs and stuff. When we're actually external structures that we care about to protect ourselves from the environment, we don't just destroy things and just somehow think somebody else is going to fix it. In self-help, we just set a boundary and somehow we think set a boundary and cut off all your sources and somehow you think you're not going to be miserable. Okay? That's not going to work well, so then you can now take medication to soothe your pitiful fucking ass. There's one definition. Character could be the sturdiness of your psychological self to have capacity to tolerate stresses, to adapt to new environments, and to be socially valuable to yourself and other people. But the sophists aren't all bad. They tapped into a back door.
The sophists would teach children of rich nobles for money, something that gave them a bad reputation, especially among later philosophers like Plato and Aristotle. Not only did they teach for money, but according to Plato and Aristotle, what they taught was not to use arguments in order to find truth, but merely to win an argument for the sake of winning.
So if you get power hungry at being right, or winning, or avoiding being wrong so you're not in danger, that's another trap, the perfectionist trap. Sophistry is very attractive. It keeps family secrets going. And if you're fighting with other sophists, it's almost like you have to use the same weapons.
This reputation lasts even to this day, signifying the art of making convincing but ultimately fallacious and misleading arguments. The most famous sophist, Protagoras, for example, argued that if two opposing claims were put forth before him, and one claim was obviously weaker than the other one, he could use arguments to make the weaker one appear stronger.
Now imagine you had two buildings. One building was built with no foundation and the other one was, and then you just put a bunch of wallpaper and pictures around the weak building and made it look stronger. Is this how you would choose a home? So is this how you want to build your character? You want to go make yourself look stronger and make yourself feel like you healed more? That's the sophist strategy. Now, why does it work? That's the thing what are they hacking to make it work?
So there is relativism to truth. It is relative on the ability to use argumentative strategies to make one claim win over the other one.
So they have truth is relative and morals are relative. And I would say, if truth is relative, they're diving into the land of relationships. They're diving into the environment of relationships. And now they're biasing how to evaluate relationships by trying to win instead of getting closer to truth. Instead of getting closer to knowing you or you knowing me, let me go tweak our relationship away from truth, closer to deception, closer to living in the past, closer to the devil. Whoever brought up all the devil stuff beforehand. So, see.
This ties into the famous sentence of Protagoras, that man is a measure of all things.
And then I can use my measure to fuck up your measurements, because everything's relative, and now I will use our relationship to just fuck with you.
Man, in general, or more precisely, each society, has its own truth. One community believes in one group of gods, the other in some other group of gods.
So there are shared reality truths based on your culture, and this is the landscape where they can now social justice warrior and just try to change culture using deconstruction. Let me just tear down everything. Adria admitted to that's her goal.
And both are valid in their belief. Protagoras believed that nature implants in all humans a capacity for justice and shame. Without justice and shame, no society is possible.
So here is the back door. There are natural principles of how societies can operate, and they can be simplified down to justice and shame. Different manifestations of order and structure and how to navigate interactions and relationships based on justice and shame. Or guilt cultures and shame cultures.
Justice and shame are universal, but what one society might find just or shameful will be different from what other society finds just and shameful. They will write laws according to their own sense of justice and shame. Therefore, the law of society
sense of justice and shame. That means there's a sensory feedback of what's just and what's shameful.
That is relative. One more important thing that Protagoras also claimed, namely that on any question there are at least two sides of argument, or as in this case, more than that. They were the first to start to question the relationship between nature and social life. They relativized entrenched norms and traditions of their time, and by doing
So they relativize entrenched norms. So the norms and the foundation of society, they turned relative and actively tried to destroy it. How is that not the path of the devil? How is that not the path of chaos, of destruction, of anti-good?
Doing this, they in fact open up the space for later philosophers to question things like society, culture, and its laws, as well as their relationship to nature. Nature implants in all humans a capacity for justice and shame, relationship to nature. The law of society arises from natural principles found in all human beings, relationship to nature. Justice and shame, relationship to nature. Justice and shame.
And I'm arguing last week, and maybe continuing, that our sense of justice is your disgust mechanism. And you had to silence your disgust mechanism when you were getting betrayed and outraged, abused as a child. So you had to digest and stuff your disgust mechanism and shut it down. So now your inner child, your hidden construct, is looking for anybody in a new relationship that will outrage you, cross the line somewhere, so that now you can spew out some of your stuck disgust onto them as a scapegoat. So you can be free of the disgust, because you trust that person to help you get free of your disgust. But your constructs and your defense mechanisms turn them into enemies because they want you to stuff your disgust back down and keep the repetition compulsion going over and over and over and over and over and over. How do I end this on a high note? Okay, we'll end this on with Pink Sweat. I don't know if I've used this in a meeting. Nice tune and nice lyrics.
Can you be my friend? Can you be my lover up until the very end?
Let me show you love, no pretend. Stay by my side even when the world is caving.
And when the world is caving in.
Oh, don't you worry, I'll be there whenever you want me. I need somebody who can love me at my worst. No, I'm not perfect, but I hope you see my worth.
Can you see my work?
Since only you, nobody know I put you first. And for you, girl, I swear I do your worst.
If you stay forever, let me hold your hand. I can feel this place is in your heart, no one else can.
Let me show you love, no pretend. I'll be right there, baby, you know we sink or swim. Oh, don't you worry, I'll be there whenever you want me. I need somebody who can love me at my word.
Is this a dual mothership? Isn't what a mother for? This is what a mother is, right? When kids go, that's...
No, I'm not perfect, but I hope you see my worth.
This is really just a mother that would put someone else first. Come on. That goes against survival instinct. Except a mother. A mother will put their kids first. That's pretty common, right? That's dual mothership.
Oh, yeah. I need somebody who can love me and my word.
No, I'm not perfect, but I hope you see my word.
'Cause it's only you, nobody knew I put you first.
And for you, boy, I swear I do the worst.
I do the worst. I remember my friend's mom saying that she was surprised that he didn't share about the shame he had with his BPD ex-wife, now in jail. He kept that secret for like 5 years or something like that. And the mother said, like, I don't know why he kept that secret. I would have his back even if he was a bank murderer. That's mother love, yeah. So, the codependents or abuse survivors who didn't have that mother were searching for that dual mothership, someone to hold space when we're at our worst. So then a new self state can get reborn, initiated as an adult, as a functional adult in the world. Otherwise, we're stuck looking for a new dual mothership to latch onto, to test, to see if it's sturdy enough for our worst, which is, yeah, mostly impossible. But maybe in ISTP and maybe in this group, we can aspire to be better containers to let people break down and show their worst. Because that's real. That's vulnerable. That's intimate. Don't we want intimacy? Can we take it?